Hi everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I have a super festive and delicious holiday dessert recipe for you guys, and I'm going to show you how to make a Wreath Pavlova topped with berries, a tart raspberry sauce, and mascarpone whipped cream. This festive and stunning dessert is so perfect for the holidays and Christmas. Now, a pavlova is a really light and fluffy meringue type of dessert, and I love to pair it with some berries and then a really simple tart raspberry sauce, which kind of helps break up the sweetness of the dessert. And then of course that mascarpone whipped cream just brings it all together. It is a must for me. You guys are going to love this dessert. It's actually super easy to make, and I'm going to have all the instructions and the full recipe up on my website. So make sure to head on down the video description box where you can find a link for that. And I also have all my recipes and metric measurements up as well. Meanwhile, let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make this incredible holiday dessert. For today's recipe, I am preheating my oven to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to get things started with the egg whites. I have 6 large egg whites, and I've brought these up to room temperature. They're going to whisk better than cold egg whites. I'm going to drop them into my mixer bowl. And before I started my recipe, I washed my mixing bowl and my whisk with a degreasing soap and some white vinegar just to get rid of any residual grease that might be left in the bowl from a previous recipe, because any little bit of grease or oil can make the egg whites stay flat and you're not going to get that light, fluffy, voluminous texture that you're going for. To the egg whites, I'm going to add in a tablespoon of lemon juice, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, and 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. The cornstarch and the cream of tartar are stabilizers, which will help keep the egg whites stable. And I'll be using 2 cups of baker's sugar. This is an ultra fine sugar that's also known as caster sugar. It's super important that you use this specific type of sugar. You can use a different brand, but you want to have this ultra fine sugar because it's going to dissolve completely in the egg whites. I don't recommend using granulated sugar simply because it doesn't dissolve properly, and then when you bake the pavlova, you end up with pools of undissolved sugar kind of forming on the bottom of the pavlova. So you can find this in most grocery stores. It's sold right next to regular sugar, and I'll include an Amazon link up on my website post if you want to buy this online. All right, let's get this started. So I'm going to whisk the egg whites with all the additions that we added in there for about 30 seconds on medium speed. And now I'm ready to add my sugar, and I'm going to be adding it 1 tablespoon at a time. This process takes about 8 to 10 minutes. You want to slowly pour it in with the mixer running on a medium speed. And as I'm adding the sugar, some of it will get stuck kind of to the sides because it hits the whisk attachment. So I'll stop periodically and just scrape down the sides of the bowl. Make sure to get all of that sugar incorporated into the egg whites. You don't want any undissolved sugar clinging to the sides of the mixer bowl. Turn this back on. This process takes just a little bit of time, but it is well worth the effort. I've added in all of my sugar, and at this point I'm going to grab my spatula, give it one last scrape down, make sure I don't have any sugar stuck to the sides. Then I'm going to turn my mixer back on to medium speed and whisk this meringue for another 15 to 20 minutes until the sugar is completely dissolved and the mixture reaches stiff peak stage. Now, I highly recommend just keeping it at that medium speed because the sugar does take a little bit of time to get to the right consistency. And to check for the doneness, I like to grab just a little bit of the meringue and just slide it in between my fingers, and when it no longer feels grainy, then it's ready to go. And my meringue is all done, and check this out. It is just a fluffy, gorgeous cloud. You want to make sure that you whisk it until it reaches stiff peak stage. And now we are ready to transfer it onto our parchment paper. And to make it really easy to shape the pavlova, I'm going to transfer it into a pastry bag. You can use just about any large tip on the end. Today I'm using a French tip number 8. I'm going to just prop it into a measuring cup so it's easier to transfer. Drop that in. I'm going to do about half the meringue at a time because there's quite a bit of it. This is just so pretty. Love making pavlova. Such a light and fluffy dessert, and it's always so impressive. I've lined a large baking sheet with some parchment paper, and then I drew a 6-inch circle in the middle. I'm going to use that just as a rough guide for piping my meringue, and we're going to just start going around in a ring, and we're going to just build up from the center. Just pipe, 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 and build up. And then I'll grab a spoon and go around the edges, really smooth everything out. And this is why it doesn't make too big of a difference what type of tip you're using, as long as it's a nice large tip so that it pipes nice and smoothly. Smooth everything out. This is going to be so festive for Christmas. Really, really pretty. And then to make a little more room on the top for the whipped cream and the berries, I'm just going to create like little dollops of the meringue on the top. And this way the the whipped cream can just kind of sit right on top. We'll have a little platform. And my Wreath Pavlova is ready for the oven. It's going to bake at 200 degrees Fahrenheit for 1.5 hours, and then I'm going to turn my oven off without opening the oven door and let it cool slowly for another 3 to 4 hours until it's completely cooled. And at no point during this baking process do you want to open that oven door, because a cold draft of air is going to cause the meringue to severely crack. Like little cracks are okay, but if you open that oven door, you're going to end up with some really big cracks. Now, this is one of those recipes that I love to make ahead of time. I like to make it the day before, and then I just let the pavlova cool in my oven overnight. Just don't forget to take it out in the morning. Now, while this is baking, I'm going to show you guys how to make my tart raspberry sauce to go with this, and that mascarpone whipped cream topping. For the raspberry sauce, I'm going to be using 2 cups of fresh raspberries. You can also use frozen ones for this. Drop those into a medium-sized saucepan along with a 1/3 cup of white granulated sugar. I'm going to set my heat to a medium, and then I'll toss together the raspberries with the sugar and let the berries come up to simmer. We'll simmer for just a few minutes until they have completely kind of fallen apart and we end up with a raspberry jam. Once my sauce is done cooking, I'm going to remove it from the heat, and then I'm going to transfer it into a fine mesh strainer situated over a large bowl. And we're going to strain out all the seeds, so all we're left with is an incredible raspberry sauce. And I use my spatula to press the seeds against the sides of the strainer. This way this process goes really quickly. And this raspberry sauce is all done. I'm going to place it into the refrigerator so it could cool down a little bit and thicken. Next, I'm going to make my mascarpone whipped cream. So into a mixing bowl, I'm going to add in 4 ounces of softened mascarpone cheese. You can also use cream cheese for this recipe. I've just let this soften at room temperature for about 15 minutes. You don't want to let it sit out at room temperature for too long, otherwise it could kind of start to separate. And I'm going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And we'll need about 1/2 cup of confectioner sugar to sweeten this. And I'll pour in 1 cup of very chilled heavy cream. You want it to be very cold so that it whisks up nicely. And then I'll use my mixer. I'm going to start out on a slow speed, and I'll mix this for about 4 to 5 minutes until stiff peaks form. And I happen to have a pavlova that I made last night that is all done and ready to be assembled. When you are making this at home, I recommend assembling it and then serving it fairly quickly. I wouldn't recommend keeping it longer than an hour because the whipped cream is going to start to soften the meringue and it won't be as crunchy. It'll still be delicious, it just won't be as crunchy. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my whipped cream. So I transferred it into a pastry bag. Today I am using the Teco Tip number 847. We're going to pipe generous dollops of this whipped cream onto the pavlova first. I'm just going to pipe this back and forth across the top, and this will hold all my fruit together. Next, I'm going to grab my raspberry sauce and we're going to add some of this to the top. There's going to be some left over that you could serve with every single slice of pavlova, and that way you get lots of that tart raspberry flavor. And now let's start adding our berries. I'm going to add a mixture of raspberries and strawberries, but feel free to add any of your favorite berries to the top as well. This just tastes so good with fruit. I'll also add on some pomegranate seeds. And for a few finishing touches, I'll add in some fresh mint leaves. Give it that festive pop of green color. And now it's time to cut into this stunning pavlova wreath. To get a taste of it, I'm gonna grab a serrated knife to help me cut through that crunchy meringue. And it's totally okay if it cracks a little bit because it is a very gentle and fragile dessert. Check out this cloud of deliciousness. This is gonna be so incredible. I'm gonna grab a little extra of my raspberry sauce to drizzle over the top of this. It's gonna add even more incredible tart flavor. And check out this pavlova. So the outside is gonna be a little bit crunchy and you're gonna hear a little tap, but the inside is still gonna have a little bit of that softness, kind of marshmallow-like texture. And that's it for my festive wreath pavlova recipe. This turned out so incredible. I could totally imagine this on a Christmas dinner table or for a Christmas party. This is going to be the star of the meal. For the full recipe, including the recipe in metric measurements, head on down in the video description box and follow that link over to my website. You'll find all the ingredients, the instructions, and of course, a printable version. Time to dig in and enjoy. I just love having some of that extra raspberry sauce. I love the crunchy outside, and you get that soft marshmallowy inside. Going to grab some fruit. I think the fruit and the raspberry sauce are a must because the pavlova itself is really sweet. And then you get a little bit of that whipped cream, some of the pavlova. This is gonna be fantastic. This is incredible. The pavlova just melts into your mouth. You have a little bit of the crunchiness on the outside, and then the tartness from the raspberry sauce, and then the fresh raspberries and fresh strawberries just really balance everything out. So incredibly delicious. A good pavlova prepared right like this one is just one of my favorite desserts. It's so fluffy, so light, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of tartness, just the perfect dessert in my opinion. If you're looking for a festive and super pretty Christmas dessert for this holiday season, this is it. You guys are going to love this Wreath Pavlova. Don't be intimidated about the meringue. It's actually super easy to put together once you get the hang of it. And then the whipped cream is really easy. The raspberry sauce is really easy. And then assembling it is super easy. You guys are going to be blown away with the flavors here too. Don't forget to head on down the video description box for the recipe link. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic holiday season, and I'll see you next time with a new recipe.